Salam everyone, welcome back to another episode of Unfiltered. My name is Musani. I'm here with Maz, Tamor, and Ali Gade today. Ali, thank you so much for joining us. I know you got a very, very busy schedule.
Alhamdulillah.
So I'm excited to have you here for this conversation, especially with June being Men's Mental Health Month. We really wanted you on. I'm going to let you introduce yourself first,
Okay.
and then we'll work from there.
All right. So thank you for having me. It's exciting to be on with you guys. My name is Ali Khadri. I am the Director of Counseling here at MCC, and I have been a mental health counselor officially since 2012, but have been practicing since college, which has been a while. So, but yeah, alhamdulillah, I'm glad to be here. I think it's a great topic that needs to be discussed.
Yeah. And prior to this episode, we came up with a list of questions, just things that we wanted to ask you. I think we've done episodes talking about like why we think men have mental health issues, ranging from like the, like be strong, stand up, like all those, stigmas that are real prevalent. But there's a lot of questions that we just, never got a chance to ask or answer. So Maz, you want to kick us off with a question?
First question. Okay, so what types of mental health issues do you think are most prominent among men?
Okay, so that's a good question. And what we know of is in men, depression, anxiety are the top two. Bipolar disorder comes in. There's a bit of psychosis and schizophrenia that also comes in. I would say those are the top four that I can think of off the top of my head as like individual issues that people are dealing with.
Okay.
Substance abuse is something that I'm starting to see a whole lot more in,
Right.
especially our Muslim community. So I don't see that as an official stat yet, but I want to say it's probably a number
Right.
4 or 5 too.
Right.
Yeah. I think those are also the ones that you hear about the most, right? Like if you think
You
of
do.
like, with all three of us watching sports, when you think of like prominent athletes, I feel
Yeah.
like the biggest ones are like anxiety, right? Or like Brandon Marshall, he has
Bipolar,
he's
yep.
bipolar.
Mhm.
So I think those are common, but I think those also create. I think part of the issues that we have is like the stigma that like the media then creates, right? And if we're gonna focus on athletes, when you think about someone like Kyrie Irving, who said he deals with anxiety, like people
Yeah.
say like
Yeah.
he's a cancer. When Brandon Marshall was still playing in Denver, people were like, oh, he's a locker room cancer.
Yep.
Mhm.
So I mean, I feel like we've talked about this, but I feel like that's one of the biggest reasons why people are then so against talking about their issues
Right.
and speaking up about them.
There's a stigma around all of it, right? Like, so it's just like you kind of hinted at it. It's like, be strong. You got this. You're a man. You're a big boy, etc. We kind of grow up with this instilled
Right.
that anytime we have feelings that are less manly, we kind of just feel like we can't share it or talk about it because if I do, maybe I'm quote unquote not as much of a man as I need to be or
Right.
I am. And because of that stigma, it adds to this like complexity that exists that makes it a little harder for us to be able to open up and be as vulnerable about some of this stuff. And the same thing we see with athletes, because if we think about it, those are like the manly men, right? Like those are
Right.
the ones that are like, oh, arr, arr, arr. And so it's just like for them to open up and talk about this stuff, it's kind of one of those things that doesn't happen as much. So that's why what you mentioned with some of these
Yeah.
athletes.
But I feel like it's starting to happen a lot more. Like aside
It
from
is.
those guys, like even people
Yeah.
that like you wouldn't consider like hotheads or like cancers or whatever are starting to step up. Like DeMar DeRozan, LaMarcus Aldridge. These people,
Yeah.
at least NBA players, at least. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a good sign. It's a good sign for sure.
It is, absolutely, because the more we see it more common and open, the more open we'll all be about talking about it. It's been such a taboo topic,
Yeah.
and in our Muslim culture and in our Desi culture or Arab culture, we see it a ton more. Like, it's that much more taboo.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask. I feel like on the topic of it being taboo, I feel like when you ask someone like, "How are you?" I feel like the biggest response you get, and I feel like y'all back me up on this, is, "I'm fine.
I'm fine.
Like
Yeah.
I'm good. It's
I'm
all
fine.
good."
Yep.
What's a good response to that? Especially when you know someone's not good and they're just giving you that answer because I feel like at this point we're also just used to giving that answer.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's a tough one. So I'll say this, right? So let's just say someone's going through something. And like you said, I know that so-and-so is going through something, and I want to really check in on them.
Right.
So when you ask them, how are you, you're going to expect that they're just going to kind of say, I'm fine. But I'm going to reverse this, right? Before I give you the answer, we'll do kind of like a little role play. So I will play the I'm fine, dude. You can ask me, and I'm going to see how you'll be on the fly. So, I'm depressed,
Fine.
something's going on. or whoever. Whoever
think
feels comfortable.
You've
doing
got some
this.
good training.
No. I do not. I think it's you. I think you're meant for this.
All right, so it looks like Timur should do it.
Oh man.
See?
We'll be the middle.
Okay.
All right.
Then I was just okay. Let's run it. Am I asking first, or I just?
Yeah. So you're asking me. I'm depressed. Clearly, I'm dealing with something. So.
How are you, man? You good?
Yeah, I'm fine, man.
All right. Well, I'm just playing.
Like, all right, that's cool.
Are you sure? You just been really down lately and stuff, and I was just wanted to check up on you.
Yeah, man, all's good. I'm fine. Thanks, though.
Now
This is where it gets tough. So,
Yeah.
so I'm making it more tough for you because it tends to be that way, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the reason why it's a little bit more tougher is because we're kind of asking questions that are inevitably going to lead us into a roadblock, where
Right.
it's like they're going to close me up. And so we have to find a way to be able to get a little bit more particular. So in counseling, they teach us to ask open-ended questions, right? And so how are you is a pretty open-ended question. But if we know someone's going to more or less answer it with one word, then we're not asking the right question. So if, I'm struggling with depression because maybe my grandfather passed away or something of that nature, then, you can, what you did, Timur, that was really good. You're like, I know you've been struggling with a lot. I just want to see how things are. You're empathizing with me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the skills that's super important, because no matter what we do, we have to be able to play back what that person might be feeling. So you did that, and that was excellent, because that should have gotten me to open up some more, because it's like, all right, he kind of gets it. But I still shut you down again, and which is what most men will do. And really all we can do at that point is give a little bit of space to get them to open up. We have to find out, why aren't they opening up? Like, is it because I'm in a group setting and I don't want to open it up this way? But if it's something personal, like maybe you take it out and that's the reason we're out, right? Like if you ask me in a setting where we're just hanging out and everyone gets together, yeah, I'm going to blow it off. But if you come and you pick me up and you say, hey man, I want to hang out, like come outside, like if you make it less formal and a little bit more informal, like, yo, I got you, having physical interaction between men, there's nothing wrong with it. Like, yo, man, look, I really love you, and I know you're struggling with a lot right now, and I know you're not feeling as comfortable to talk about it, and I'm going to respect whatever you want to share, but I want you to know I'm here. And, if I can be an ear for you, that's the most that I can do, and I'll be happy to do that. And, when you start just giving them that kind of love and support, that tends to break that ice. So I would say the how are you is only getting us this far. The rest of it is a whole lot more of what you did, which was empathy and just really, I'm sure you're struggling with a lot. And then following it up with, I'm here for you, and then asking those questions. When you ask at that moment, after you do that, you're much more likely to get a response than, hey, how are you, man? And we tend to do this because as dudes, we're just, that's just how we are. And we tend to be much more open about these things. But particularly when it's something bothering us, we'll close up. But yeah.
Do you just drop it after that second time? Like tomorrow role play that with you, and he said, asked the second time, and you were like, nah, like I'm good. Is that like the moment where you drop it, or would you press again? Like how many times is like, yo, chill, like you're pressing too much?
So each person is different, right?
Okay.
So like even with all three of you, each one of you might answer that different, right? Like if you were really struggling with something and I asked you, when would you want me to stop?
Probably that second time.
What about you?
Probably the same. I don't think I would I'm open. I'm not like a hard brick wall.
So maybe you would have answered the first question. Is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. What about you?
I probably would have.
I feel like you're a tough cookie to crack.
Yeah. I probably would have. Yeah, same thing. I probably just been like, I'm good. Like,
Yeah.
like don't worry about it.
And so like after a second or third question, it's just like now I'm annoyed. Like
Yeah.
I was
Exactly.
good, but now I'm
Yeah.
annoyed. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would say it's dependent. Like you kind of Timur gauged Maz's personality and said, I think he's a tougher cookie to crack.
Yeah.
So we kind of know our friends' personalities to
Yeah.
know how much is too much. So
At the same
we
time, you
kinda
also would
need to
know, like if you're close enough to someone, like you would know, like you might be more comfortable to like reach them on the side, go to
Yes,
their house, and like
exactly.
how you like that example
Right.
you gave. So
and that's the most important thing, because when it comes to something like this, it has to be that way.
Yeah.
And let's just say it's someone like in the youth or someone like that we're trying to reach out to. Obviously we have to find different tactics, but it is kind of a little bit tactical in that sense to
Yeah.
approach it. Once that's done and you break that ice, it's open. Like people
Yeah.
open up after that.
I love that example you gave where it was like, oh, that informal meeting with someone
Mm-hmm.
one-on-one and not in a group setting. I think we all should have, or we all
Yeah.
do have that one person we could rely on to go to if you're really going through something.
Right.
You'd like be like, yo, can I talk to you real quick? And then just hit them
Mm-hmm.
up and have that informal. I've definitely had a lot of those.
Great. That's awesome,
with
dude.
individuals and stuff like that.
That's
DMCs,
wonderful.
DMCs, deep, meaningful conversations. You know?
Hey, look, honestly, that's what we need to have a whole lot
Mhm.
more of, because the more we can do that, the more real we'll be to ourselves and to them. And if we don't have that kind of emotional capacity to share, if you can't do that with your friends, you're going to have a hard time being married
Yeah.
and doing it with a spouse. So, like, I think it's super important for us to be able to do that now.
Or just like regular mental health checks.
Yeah.
Where's your, like we do it with Unfiltered.
Oh, that's
with our
awesome.
group, like
Okay.
randomly, like maybe like once every couple months or something. Like, where you guys at?
Yep.
You know, then we'll kind of just go around each person
Yeah.
individually. You know, if you want to talk about it, you can talk about it.
Yeah.
If you don't want to, you don't want to, of course. But I think
That's
it's
great.
I think it's good.
I
that
think
it's
that's
healthy.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Not enough people do that, and I applaud you guys for doing that, because it's something that's awesome. I did that with my cousins too. My cousins were like an extension of my brothers, essentially.
Yeah.
So we grew up together, and we did the same thing. And I'm glad I was able to do that, because not only did I learn from them, they learned from me, and we've all been able to take these skills and utilize them. So it's great that you guys are doing that.
Yeah.
Because the more we can understand our emotions, the easier it is to be able to understand why we're feeling the way we're feeling.
Right.
I guess switching gears, what would you say are like, I feel like for guys especially, like we
Mhm.
tend to miss some very obvious signs that something's either wrong or something isn't going right. What would you say are like the most obvious signs that someone is struggling? That's kind of like the point where you should have that check-in and
Yeah.
have that empathetic moment with them.
Okay, so it's a good question. Now, I would say you know your friends. You know them to a fault almost. And you'll be able to tell where they're acting out of character, right? So a sign that someone's out of character is usually a telltale sign there's something going on. If you know, for instance, one of your friends like Maz, he's trimmed up, he's looking nice, he's got a fade. If he's not doing that anymore, and all of a sudden he's not caring about his appearance, Maz is, fade up. I'm just picking on you. I'm just.
I think I've already started
that. But that's where you see that kind of character is different than what you've experienced. It's a great sign to be able to say there's something that I need to look into. Another is if you see a friend that's just kind of substance abusing. That's a telltale sign too. So those are two big ones. And then generally situational events, like, if there's something bad happening in their life. And if you don't, right? Like if you don't know what's going on in their home, you don't know what's going on in their school, you don't know what's going on in their world, then chances are they might be struggling with something, and they've been so good at hiding everything about themselves because they focused it all on you guys, then, that person's harder to crack. So you have to just be really kind of in tune. But physical manifestations, baggy eyes, unkept looks and appearance, not showering, things of that nature, those come up as well.
I'm interested in wanting to know, like, what made you want to learn more about this, like, all this and go down this kind of career path and stuff? Because it's tough,
good
especially
question.
in the Desi community. We don't really
It is, man.
have
It
this
really
knowledge
is.
and stuff.
Desi and like Muslim,
Yeah.
I guess.
That
like,
too.
yeah.
So it's funny, right? Like, it's been something that since high school, I just naturally started doing a lot more and really enjoyed it. And so, like they say, do what you enjoy. So I really liked helping people. I got a great joy out of doing that. And it really comes from one hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. So and it's a hadith Qudsi that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that if you help anyone in this world, I will help you in the hereafter. So to me, it's like, if I can make my life about helping people, then inshallah, I can use that as like a springboard. So that was kind of the first thing. Like, I was listening to a lecture and that hadith came up, and I was just like, whoa, So, and then if you remove a difficulty of your brother in this world, Allah will remove a difficulty of yours in the hereafter. And so those two things stuck with me, and they just kind of permeated more and more to the point where I'm like, I don't know what I want to do really. I really like psychology. I love design work. There were so many pathways I could have gone. After I worked in the crisis hotline at UIC to just get myself exposed and say, do I really want to do this? After I did that and realized, I think I do, or actually, sorry, I got burnt out by that because there were some really hard suicidal moments with callers that I didn't realize what I was getting myself into. I did go into the business world. Didn't like that. Did it for a year. Then I went overseas to Yemen and studied the Islamic side of counseling. And my teacher there, I'll never forget it. I'm like, I'm trying to do this thing where I'm learning psychology and, I want to tie it to Islam and, I don't know if this is the right thing. He's like, Islam is from psychology and psychology is from Islam. And so when he said that, it's quite interesting because a lot of the techniques and things that we learn in counseling and psychology are really, really tied to our religion of how to bring about and learn things. So those are the things that kind of pulled me into it. And then when I came back, I did my master's, alhamdulillah, and went down that path. So it's a long-winded answer, I know.
Sounds eventful, but it sounded like you knew it. Like the path led you where you want.
It was a journey, right? Like it was because it's like I kind of knew what I wanted to do, and then I put my feet into it, got scared, and then realized no, that is what I want to do, and got that call in to go back and was like, all right, that's it. I'm going in deep.
I think that's awesome, especially just like with the way like our culture and I guess the way with our religion is sometimes that like people like let's say parents and stuff like they would be like what is this unconventional route that you're taking for the career, the path that you want to take?
My parents still don't. just the other day, my younger cousin who graduated high school and was going to go into college, my dad's like, oh, what are you going to go study? Just don't go do psychology. like Dad, why are you going to tell that? There's definitely a good career that could come from it too.
Oh my God, that's too funny. That is funny.
But yeah, still battling that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it worked out for you in the way that you wanted it to. Yeah. I know you're big on saying like, Allah has the journey right now. You just gotta follow it. I guess like wrapping back, like all three of us are on the same age. I think we have our own mental health outlets. I think it's good to talk about on our end.
Yeah.
Do you have any that you think are outside of like, actually like I feel like sports is a big one for both of us.
Right.
You've got your occasional poetry. So I mean, like, what are some that are like you might not think of because sports are definitely a big one, but
sports are a really big one. So I would say, look, like especially in college, right? We have career counseling and guidance counseling that's available for students. It's so underutilized sometimes that it never hurts. Just even if you feel okay and you don't think there's anything wrong. There's nothing wrong with going and just seeking therapy because therapy it sounds a lot bigger than it actually is. And really what it is just a conversation with someone else who's going to listen to you attentively and repeat back some of the things that you said and make sure they got it. And then ask you some open-ended questions to help you kind of navigate your own thoughts. So, if you're struggling with something, going through therapy can help you navigate that. And so that part's important. And so, like you mentioned, sports is a great outlet to be able to do it. Hanging out, socialization is another big one. Doing kindness to other people it's shown to give positive increase internally. So doing something good for other people will help us. There's a powerful thing called doing a gratitude journal. And if you guys don't do this, it's something that I recommend. Every day, you write down 3 things that you're grateful for. You wake up in the morning, you think about it. There's so many things for us to be grateful for. And the life that we have here in America is so much easier than lives that our brothers and sisters have overseas. And, just keeping that thought log of what you're grateful for. They say after 21 days, you get something called the happiness advantage. You'll begin to just see life in a positive lens. And that is the most profound effect that you can have in your life. That even if you're not struggling with anything, if you can put a positive outlook, and the Prophet ﷺ was this, he was optimistic and always found the good in everything. If you can do that, that will be a big one. So gratitude journals, kindness to others, meditation they say helps as well. So in our case, being very in tune with our prayer, and socialization along with sports. So those would be the...
Do you two have any that you like practice on your own that we didn't bring up right now?
I don't have a gratitude journal. I've never heard of that, but it sounds interesting. Yeah. I do from time to time while I wrote I used to back when I was a kid, I just wrote like something I did each day. Like every day I'd write something different, like just to remember and look back on.
Diary.
Yeah. And recently I actually write like, no, none of that. But no, recently, recently from time to time, like once every 6 months, maybe even a year, I have like a journal.
That's awesome.
That just write some stuff in.
Yeah.
Like whenever I'm feeling, or whenever I go through something eventful or whatever I'm feeling, I just write in it.
Yeah, kind of like a thought log. And
Yeah.
You just are able to do it.
And then I'd
That's
like
really
going
good.
back and looking back at it like years from now or
Yeah.
months from now. Like, I remember when that was going on, or I did that, and
Yeah,
et
it's like,
cetera.
oh man, I was feeling that.
Yeah.
1.2. I'm picking on you, but I did the same thing, and I still have those.
Uh-huh.
So I did it as young as like in 7th grade. I found one of my journals from then. That at that time it was a school assignment.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
But you know, it's crazy to go back and see where was I in those moments. Was it like you?
Why are you looking at me like that, man?
I'm thinking about those 8th grade letter to selves.
I never got mine,
Oh,
unfortunately,
I
but I
remember
really wish I
those.
read mine.
Yeah,
Really?
yeah, just because we were talking about like where you were in
Yeah.
life and
Yeah, where do you want to be? There's this website where you can email yourself in the future. I forget what it's called, but if you
Oh,
Google
wow.
it, you can write yourself something,
That's
like,
dope.
you know, what you're trying to aspire to, and it sends you an email
Yeah.
at the date and time that you tell it to.
That's awesome.
And, you know, you can read it and go, man, this is what I told myself. I was supposed to be here at this point. You know, it's like a good check.
yeah. I've got 2 more questions before I let you go. All right.
for sure.
The biggest one, I think, with all of us being 22, 23 soon.
Soon.
Sure.
Like, what is your advice to guys our age, right? Outside of the natural, like, you know, there is a stigma. Like, you should prioritize your mental health. Like, what is something that it's like an underrated
Man, so
advice?
yeah, okay. So mine will be unconventional because I'm very unconventional, and I got to travel. I honestly think people need to travel more. And when I say travel, not just like go somewhere and take Instagram pictures. I mean literally go somewhere and spend some time in that other country. Go to India. If you see the poverty in the streets of India, you'll be really blown away. It's wild. I mean, when I got to see that for the first time, it was insane. I got to do study abroads when I was in college. I went to Ireland and Egypt, and I got to live there. I got to experience different cultures and outlooks in life. And that really changed everything, but it also made me discover a lot about myself. And so I think being able, especially at this time, look, eventually we all need to get married and get a job, right? No doubt. But if you don't spend some time really figuring out who you are, who you want to be in life, what is the contribution you're going to do in this world, then you're just going through checkpoints, right? And so I think taking some time off to do some reflection of self, get some self-awareness, and if that's from traveling or from just going into something that you wanted to do that you didn't get to do because you did your studies and you prioritized that, I think finding that time for yourself before you get married, before you get your job, you know, those things are also really important. But for the most part, at your age, and inshallah, I don't know the family situations, but for the most part, our parents, we have a roof over our head. We have some way to be able to be stable enough that we can explore now, because you'll never get that again. So I would say that that's the most expensive thing you have right now, is to be able to take that time and do it. Parents might give you a little grief for it, but I think this is the time to do it rather than later. I have some kids that are in their 30s that still haven't finished college, haven't gotten married, and you know, it's hard. Like, I'm sitting here going, the parents are coming, and I feel like they're a 22-year-old that's stuck in a 30-year-old body because they didn't do what they should have earlier on, and they're doing it now. Like, I want to go do this and that, and my parents don't want me to. I'm like, well, why didn't you do that then? So that's what I would say.
Do you guys have any questions you want to ask before I ask my final one?
I think that was some of the best advice I've gotten on Unfiltered. But yeah, that was amazing.
No,
I have no
I'm being
questions on top of
unfiltered.
it.
No, that was good.
That's what we're all about.
Oh man! All right, so I guess I wanted to ask you what
Yeah.
therapy entailed, but I think you went
Right.
through it pretty well, talking about how it's a deep, it's a discussion,
Mhm.
points back. So I want to ask, what is, for a lot of people, I think, and I'm going to include the 3 of us, right? So like when I Chicago quarter mentored at DePaul, and DePaul has like a crisis hotline, crisis center. But even when you would tell kids to, like, stop by if you're struggling, because a lot of times, these kids come from far out of state. They haven't, like, this is the first time away from their parents, home,
Yep.
and they're struggling. And I'd recommend that. They'd be like, no, like, that's therapy. Like, I don't want to go to therapy.
Yeah.
And I feel like we probably act the same way because we didn't know what therapy was or what it's about.
Right.
What have you noticed is like the biggest misconception people have about therapy prior to actually going to therapy?
So the biggest is, if I go to therapy, there's something wrong with me,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Like, I got some kind of mental disease or illness or something of that nature. And that would be the biggest stigma. So I kind of told you guys earlier what therapy entails. So just being able to understand there's nothing wrong with you if you go to therapy. That's the biggest thing. Really, what a therapist is someone very well trained to be able to help you get through whatever you might be going through, even if it's nothing, just to sort out your thoughts. And so the biggest stigma is just getting over your own ego, if you will. Really, like our own nafs, and saying, our nafs is preventing me from doing this because it knows. Shaitan wants us to all be depressed and suffer from anxiety. If shaitan doesn't get you by making you drink and have, illicit affairs, he's going to attack you at your personal level. He's going to make you feel depressed and anxiety. And those are very common. And so it's important for us to know that we have to get over our internal dialogue that's preventing us from seeking assistance. There's nothing wrong with you by going there. You don't automatically get listed or categorized or labeled like you're suffering from something. There isn't a record that's stuck with you. So I think that's kind of the biggest one that I've heard. And I would ask you guys, what are some of the ones you heard? Because we can combat some of what we hear.
I just feel like, I don't know, maybe growing up or in general, therapy and like rehab are kind of similar, or like
Sure,
that's what your brain processes. Maybe
the connotation.
Yeah.
The negatively charged connotation.
Yeah.
It's got a very.
You just close your eyes, you picture someone in a straight jacket, like in a
That's right.
blank
Yeah.
room, just like sitting there.
I feel like in rehab, I feel like I would just like as a kid just like picture that as just like substance abuse stuff. Like, oh, people they're going to rehab because they have a problem with drugs or they have a problem with alcohol. Like I don't even think about rehab in the sense that
and rehab for sure is that.
Yeah.
And so like, we have to be able to understand, and that's what it is. We have connotations of I'm crazy, or, the taboo of what I've heard, you're not crazy. You just have to suck it up and, you deal with whatever you're dealing with. So we're told all these things that make it kind of stand out as something that we should shy away from. And biggest thing is we just need to be able to not shy away from it. We need to be able to lean into it, especially if a friend of ours says, hey man, you should consider it.
Yeah. How would you combat desi parents?
So, they don't need to know, right? Like, I'm going to counseling. Why does mom and dad need to know that I'm doing it? And if you want to tell them, that's okay. But you can educate them, because education is the core of it all. Like, if we don't educate our parents, and it's hard because some of them are stuck in their old ways, but eventually I've seen a lot of old school parents come around on many things, and they saw it themselves. Like, okay, look, I'm going and doing this, and my son's getting better, and so they see that, and they themselves kind of change their tone.
I feel like you guys covered like the bigger misconceptions. I feel like it's usually just like I don't need therapy.
That's
and I think that again, like you addressed it stems from your ego. And I feel like as brown men, I think you can attest that ego is probably one of your bigger issues.
But it is. And in Islam, we have the whole practice of tasawwuf that's like dedicated to really controlling our ego in different ways. And there's such a beauty in that, because a lot of our own issues stem from within. I'll leave us with one thing. In cognitive behavioral therapy, it's a form of therapy in counseling that we use that's very powerful. And what it says is your thoughts, your feelings, and your behavior are all interlinked. So it's like a triangle. So what you are feeling, like if I'm feeling sad, there's a thought, like maybe it's I'm not good enough, I'm going to fail this test. And that's going to lead to a behavior, which is I'm probably going to fail this test because for the whole week, all I've been telling myself is I suck and I'm going to do bad, right? And so it's really important to just monitor your thoughts. What am I feeding myself, right? Like when we think about our social feeds, like what are you watching? Like if I'm watching a bunch of like muscular dudes and I'm, out of shape, well, you're probably not doing the right thing for yourself unless you're using that as motivation. So you have to really check in on your feed, both your social feeds and your mental feed, to see where you are mentally, because a lot of what you're feeling and how you're behaving is thought to goes right back to your thoughts. So I'll leave us with that, because I think that's the seed of it all.
Yeah, I think that's thought provoking. I'm gonna have to sit here and think about it.
Mental feed, man, wow.
Yeah,
a whole new world.
But yeah, Ali, once again, man, I appreciate you coming on.
Absolutely.
lights are more said. Honestly, I feel like there's a lot of gems in this episode that I'm going to have
Yeah.
to look back on and think about
100%.
and
Awesome.
let digest. So
Yeah.
I appreciate you coming on. I
For
appreciate
sure.
you giving us
It
all
was
this
a
advice.
pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much. I look forward to coming on again.
Yes, sir.
Inshallah.
Inshallah.
Yeah, we'll see all you guys next time.
All right. Take it
Thank
easy,
you.
everyone. Assalamu
Peace.
alaikum.